Oh, all right.
I'll make sure we take it off.
In case he gets lost.
No, but it's a shot call now. His wife, she's got the control over here, so use this side. Yours is on that side?
Yeah, right.
Oh, your left, yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But they all know what's going on. That's the only way I know what's going on. It's a Wall Street Journal.
Oh, yeah, well,
No, but that's where the pad goes.
Well, you can, yeah.
Unless you want to kill it. No, they. Pad
Sure. Then I see.
Okay, let's go.
I like that.
It's a great idea you had. Okay, at 7 o'clock, October 15th, I'll bring the meeting to order with a roll call from my right.
Paul Sanders. Chester Duraki.
Vaughn Morgan.
Jim Rolston.
Chip Hussey. We have a quorum and the meeting is being recorded. The first item on the agenda is one of 3 appointments. The first is an appointment to the rec department.
Mr. Haskins is requested to be appointed to the Recreation Commission. He spent the last 6 years coaching for us and grew up in Newington, played Greenland rec sports, and has been very active with the committee. And the chairman recommends it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Haskins, for stepping up to the plate. We really appreciate that. The town of volunteers, and to get volunteers today is like looking for hen's teeth. So we really appreciate you stepping up to the plate. Do you anything you'd like to say?
No, I've enjoyed it. My oldest daughter is aging out, and my youngest daughter is aging in, so it's a good transition time.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So far, so good.
All right. Any other comments from the board?
Well, no, I approve. He's coached my kids and they've rec activities together, so. I move to appoint DJ Haskins to the Recreation Committee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Actually, the reason we had you come here is we don't go up to, hey, you, who you?
Exactly.
All right, that's
Or
it.
vice versa.
Yes.
So you're
Thank
good.
All right. I'll hang out for the other one.
Yep, and then just see Marge in the town clerk's office, or you're going to say the
No,
same thing?
you go ahead and
Just
say
to be sworn in.
Okay.
it. Okay, she's all ready for it.
Right now?
No,
No, not right now.
Turn working out.
She's
That was my first
He has the goldfish you have to swallow.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the second is Mr. Craig McLaughlin, Weeks Library Building Committee. You're on.
Thank you. Before I begin, I want to say that this is not personal. I told Chester before, and I'll say it again, good men can differ. So recently, a selectman has said the following: approach to the AG office has to be the selectman, not the library trustees. Point 2, the library trustees themselves do not have the legal authority to enter into negotiations with abutting landowners. Only the selectmen can do that. Point 3, the current septic system may be illegal. And point 4, any agreement that has been reached by the library trustees at this point can't be implemented.
And I said that because it was true.
I may not take issue with some of those later, but I hope I quoted you correctly.
You did.
In addition to these statements, the town engineer has advised that he will not be reviewing the plans until after the legal issues are resolved. So that review is on hold. In my opinion, taken as a whole, the above statements could be taken as an attempt to take control of the library project away from the library trustees. Such an attempt would be contrary to RSA 202A6, which states, the library trustees shall have the entire custody and management of the public library and of all the property of the town relating thereto. Now, there's some fine print and it gets quite complicated, but let me break the issues down without using legal terminology except where it's essential. And I'd like to take the above statements point by point. So number one, approach to the AG office has to be the selectmen, not the library trustees. The charitable trust unit of the Office of the Attorney General regulates library property. All public libraries have access to this office. So the library trustees contacted Tom Donovan, the current director of the charitable trust unit, and sought guidance on some of the selectmen's statements. Mr. Donovan promptly responded, gave us guidance, and thanked the library trustees for reaching out to him. And I provided a copy of that email to you before this meeting. Comment number two, the library trustees do not have the legal authority to enter into negotiations with abutting landowners. Only the selectmen can do that. From Mr. Donovan's email, but the selectmen should sign a new agreement only with the consent of the library trustees who manage the library. Point three, the current septic system may be illegal. Without going into the legal differences between an easement and a revocable license, the selectmen used a revocable license for the parish house window wells that were installed on library property in 2015. From Mr. Donovan's email, the same rules that applied to the window wells apply to any shared septic. I will add, if a revocable license works for a window well, why not a septic system? What is the uncertainty about? Point four, any agreement that has been reached by the library trustees cannot be implemented. The library wants to remain a good neighbor and has gone to great lengths in discussing the impact of the project on our neighbors. Discussions with the school, church, and abutter began December of last year. To suggest that the library trustees, the manager of the property, cannot reach agreements with its neighbors is unreasonable. The discussions have centered around outlines of terms and/or letters of intent, the types of documents which are traditionally given to attorneys to draft binding agreements once the parties have agreed to what they want. If the selectmen are to be involved in signing any agreements, as Mr. Donovan said, the selectmen should sign a new agreement only with the consent of the library trustees. Point five, we can't grant an easement. We agree. The library is not requesting an easement. In early September, it was the NHDES that requested the library provide easements for the church to have a septic system on library property. But the NHDES has now recognized the complications and instead requested a notarized copy of the existing letter of cooperation between the library and the church, and we are proceeding with that. Now to some important details of the septic system. The NHDES has specified the minimum size of the septic system. There is no law against installing a septic system that is larger than the minimum required. The library and church intend to honor the 62-year tradition of allowing the parish house to have a septic system on library property. Therefore, the library project includes a new septic system that will be large enough to handle both the library and the parish house. Allowing the church to connect to this larger system is appropriate, considering the shared driveway and parking offered by the church, and those are essential to smooth operation of the library. Question, the selectmen used a revocable license for the window wells. Why not use that same logic for the shared septic system. In summary, for that point, let's not bring into question town practice for the past 62 years and use a legal technicality as an excuse to stop progress on the library project. Now let's talk money. We are now 7 months after the voters approved the project. It has taken the selectmen that long to obtain a commitment letter from Optima. The commitment letter will expire if not signed within the next 15 days. Signing the bond is a prudential responsibility of the selectmen. The selectmen must be prudent, but cannot refuse to sign the bond simply because you disagree with some decisions made by the library trustees. The time to finalize the proper legal structure of the agreements is in the period after signing the commitment letter and before closing on the bond, which can be up to 90 days later. Of course, we would expect the attorneys not to take all 90 days to sort out the legal details. For example, the Director of Charitable Trusts has offered to meet with the library trustees, and we are prepared to do that later this week. The selectmen are welcome to join that meeting. Interest rates. Anyone who pays attention to such things knows that another federal rate hike is expected. Financial benchmarks, which are used for most lending, have been steadily increasing and are expected to continue to do so. If the selectmen neglect their prudential responsibility and insist on delaying the bond, it could easily cost the taxpayers over $40,000 of additional interest over the next 10 years. The interest rate resets at that point. How much do we expect to have to pay while attorneys debate legal definitions in a 62-year agreement that should be continued? In addition to higher interest rates, the cost of construction is steadily going up. The library trustees have included contingency funds in the project and intend to have those funds remaining at the end of the project. Every delay makes that more difficult to do. In summary, in my opinion, it would be fiscally irresponsible for the selectmen to refuse to sign the commitment letter. The library project will benefit the citizens of Greenland and especially the students. The voters approved the expenditure. I don't understand why this is becoming so difficult. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. You had one question in your, what was your question that you brought up a little bit earlier?
Was it about the irrevocable license versus an easement?
I think, yeah, you had a question for us.
I did. Let me check. The selectmen used a revocable license for the window wells. Why not use that same logic for the shared septic system?
Okay. I'm going to have to refer that to you if you can.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to talk about it, but first, is there anyone here from the church board?
No.
Okay. So I'll answer the question and then I'll make my comment.
Okay.
The difference between a revocable license and an easement is simply this. An easement is a permanent interest in land. A revocable license is something that can be revoked at will. My concern here, and the difference between a window well and a septic system, is just this. There's a revocable license with those window wells. If for some reason we said to them, remove that encroachment onto town property, the church building would still be perfectly operable. They'd be able to conduct virtually all of their programs. They'd be able to adjust. If, however, we use that same authority with a revocable license with regard to a septic system. That would mean there could be no effluent flow out onto town property. That would effectively shut down the operation of the church property and make it so it would be almost impossible for them to conduct their program or any of their operations. I think that's the substantial difference between the two of them. Now, with respect to the other part, the part that I think is most important was the offer from the Director of Charitable Trust to talk to the library trustees and the selectmen. I think it's also critical that someone from the church be there, because their interests are critically impacted by any potential agreement that is reached. And so, yes, I think that is the positive step that could be taken. And I'd be more than happy to participate in a meeting with the Attorney General's office, the library trustees, and the church, and any other members of the Board of Selectmen who wish to participate in that as well, in an effort to try to bring this to some reasonable conclusion.
Very good.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, as far as my part goes, and I'm speaking for myself, again, everybody knows that selectmen speak for themselves unless we all vote as a member team. Where I come from is the safety issue, okay? I have a letter here from the police department who has concerns about safety on that project, and I have a letter here from the fire department, and they have concerns about safety. I think you have copies of these. If you don't, I'll be happy to give them to you.
I have from the police department. I don't have anything from the fire department.
I'll give you the one from the fire department. These issues, along with some of the planning board issues of safety, that is all I'm considered with, is concerned about is the safety of the building. If that building can, if the planning board comes back to me, police department, fire department, and building inspector come back to me and say it's a safe building, I'm signing anything you want me to sign. That is my job. You're absolutely right. I will do my prudential responsibility, and I will definitely do that. But I also have a responsibility, as I've said before. Safety is a very important thing here. And you must understand that. If you were sitting here, I can't believe you wouldn't do the same thing.
I agree.
All right?
Yep.
So that's all I'm looking for. I want to make this a safe project. So if I can get a blessing from the planning board, the building inspector, the fire department, and the police department, I'm happy with it. That's all I'm saying. I have a responsibility to the residents of this town, whether they like me or dislike me, I don't care. That's my responsibility. I'm not in this position because as a popularity type of thing. I want to make sure that what's done in this town is done safely. And I really want to make that clear to you, all right?
That's fine. May I respond to that?
Yes, please.
So Thursday night, as you know, we'll make a presentation to the planning board.
Yes.
We are specifically addressing safety.
Good.
We will have the architect present, and he has been told crystal clear that that's what the main topic is. So we are addressing that. But at the same time, I would request that other reviews of the project, including the town engineer, not be stopped because of this issue between an easement and a license.
Okay.
That appears to be the case.
Okay. All right. I will be at the planning board meeting, and we'll listen to what it is that has to be said, all right? And I do have an open mind about this. I really, really do. Nothing I like better than to get this behind me, because I have too many other things I've got to deal with right now. But I will be at the meeting, and we will see how this thing goes, and we'll see how you all address the issue, and hopefully we can resolve this. Hopefully. Because I really would like to get this behind me.
Well, I appreciate that, and I understand the meeting's going to be here, and we will try to arrange. We have dozens of library supporters who might want to attend, but we'll try to
please keep
be
that
reasonable with that. And
I think that if you have some good representatives here, you can convey the message.
well, we have the chair back here somewhere, so
Yeah.
message received.
Okay. All right. Yes, Jim.
I just, reading the police thing about the parking in front. If this never happens, we're still gonna have the same problem that we've had for the last 50 or 60 years. It's not gonna change safety at all. I think it would probably improve safety if there's additional parking available that's more reasonable. But, I guess
And I
that's
guess
just my
at
comment.
that point, Jim, the better we can do by working together with the church, the better we can address that issue as well.
Anybody else have any comments?
I mean, as far as that parking, nothing changed, and you gotta rely on the safety people, the fire and police. They're both saying it's not safe the way it is, and the way it's gonna be. So,
Okay.
that's a big issue for me. Police and fire truck can't get around it. I mean, this should have been out a long time ago. We should have been past this a long time ago.
Well,
But
can the fire truck get around it now?
that's not in the snow.
Ralph's here, isn't he? Ask him.
To be honest with you, a fire truck can't make it on the new ones, can, especially if there's parked cars parked there. And we're not gonna anyway. The parish house is on fire, it's not sprinkled, we're not gonna park right next to it.
But now you've got a building that houses a lot more people, so we put a lot more people at risk.
You're talking about the library?
Yes.
The library you can pull right up the side, throw your hoses around the back.
Right now.
Yeah,
Right.
even with the new
So that was your
design.
question, right?
Yeah, well, my
Yeah.
point, I guess, was that nothing's gonna change. If they can't get around it now,
But
they
he
can't
said
get
that
around it when it's thing.
The chip says they can get
It's gonna
it.
be 100 more people.
Well, they can't get, if there's anybody parked there, you can't get around there.
Yeah.
It never could.
You'd
That's
have
your
to,
question, guys.
you would have to go in straight, I would assume, and run your.
Yes, Marcia.
Marcia McLaughlin,
Yeah.
47 Nantucket Place. The library building addition will be sprinkled. And I believe, I may be misquoting, this person would know better. I think that they're going to sprinkle the old building in the process of the updating and renovation of the old building. So it will all be sprinkled.
Okay.
And may I address the parking?
Yes, you may.
I've heard it said before by our architect, we are not in control of that parking area in front of the library. That is a state road and that's part of the state road. That would be an issue that the state would have to address and should not impact our library project. Just saying.
For the record, I'm not talking about the parking out front,
Okay.
out back, on the church, parish house.
Okay. All right, thank you, Craig, I appreciate that, and we'll see you on Thursday night.
You will.
Okay, great. All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, the third appointment is Hillside Drive. That must be you.
Yes, it is. Good evening, everybody.
Yeah.
I sent a letter last week, later in the week. I hope you all had a chance to receive it
Yeah.
and review it. Oh, my name is Eric Mayer. With me is Patricia Ross, the resident over at 2 Hillside Drive.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, before you do your presentation, just a question.
Certainly.
From Donahue Tucker, right?
Correct.
Do you realize your firm represents the town on telecommunications issues and that we're a client?
Yes, in our representation letters, we did review that matter. Our representation letter does say that we are being retained by the town on a very limited basis, which is for telecommunications, and that it doesn't impact our ability to appear in front of the board or other municipal bodies associated with the town for unrelated matters. So we did look at this issue. We did an analysis to determine whether or not this issue touched upon anything else that we're doing on behalf of the town, and we determined it does not, so that we can, per the engagement letter, represent the Rosses.
Okay, thank you for making that clear.
All right, proceed.
Well, I think the letter is somewhat straightforward. I wanted to take this opportunity to appear in front of the board and see if there is a resolution that could be had on this issue. As is set forth in the letter, the town did some stormwater management system improvements that were completed. I think the process started in 2013. It completed, I want to say, sometime around 2017, 2018, if my recollection serves me right. The original design plans that were prepared by Underwood called for a capping of an 8-inch pipe that actually runs underneath the Ross's property. That was not done. As a result, stormwater has been able to backflow with such pressure that it's been able to enter into their basement and cause a substantial amount of flooding that now needs to be remediated. The long and short of it is that the Rosses, particularly Patricia, does not have the money to make these repairs. This damage occurred by no fault of her own, and it was because there was an uncompleted aspect of the project, and we asked for the town to help remedy this situation.
Okay,
And Ben Dreyer from Underwood is here if you have any technical questions.
okay. Ben, do you have anything to say?
Not at this point, but as this discussion continues, then feel free to ask me questions.
Okay, all right.
Can I correct one thing?
Yes, you can.
He said that the town pipe runs through the Ross's property. It does not. It's on town property.
It's on town property.
Yes.
It runs in front of it.
It runs in front, but the pipe is actually on town property.
Okay.
Okay. The fact remains, it is a
Yes.
part of the town system that has caused it backflow.
Okay.
I do have one thing I would say.
Thank you for that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just to clarify the timeline. Yeah, I think it's correct in the way the letter is written, but it was completion of construction was around 2015. And I think this issue came up around 2018.
Well, 17 and 18, this isn't the first year that we've got flooded.
Right, we became aware of it around 2018. But
Right,
the
because,
construction,
we just took care of it before, we didn't think it was that.
All right. Has everybody on the board had a chance to read through this? Okay. My suggestion, is just my suggestion, is I would like to hold a non-public after this meeting to discuss this. All right? I just think it's something that, it's a legal issue, and so I would like to, I'm going to take your suggestion into consideration and discuss this under non-public at the end of the meeting. If everybody is okay with that, I'm fine.
I completely agree.
Okay.
And in order to get us there, I'll be more than happy to make a motion that at the conclusion of our regular session, we enter into a non-public session to discuss this pending legal matter.
Okay. I have a motion. Do you have a second? I need a roll call vote on that.
Sanderson, aye.
Duraki, aye.
Morgan, aye.
Ralston, aye.
Fuzzy eye.
Okay. Motion passes. All right, very good. We will get back to you pretty quickly about this and let you know if we come up with it.
As a point of clarification, are we allowed to sit in the room during this aspect of the non-public? I know under certain circumstances.
Not in this, because this is something we need to discuss amongst ourselves. It's a legal issue, so. But you'll hear the results. All right.
Okay. Was there anything else? Any questions?
Any other questions
the board had regarding this? Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate all the members of the board.
I appreciate your
Thank you
comment.
very much.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure meeting you all.
Okay, now comes the fun part, budget review.
Me?
You're on.
Thank you.
I just want to let everybody here on the board know that our police chief car has been up since 3 this morning.
And I
With
get
a crime scene investigation, so if she falls asleep halfway through her presentation, please let her snooze for a while.
Or if you have a question and I pause, it's just trying to get my thoughts in order.
We'll bring you back.
Great, I appreciate that. My budget actually is pretty simple.
simple this year. I did rearrange it a little bit from past years, just so that it matches up with what you're used to seeing on the town side, like what Karen prepares for you. So what you'll see on the white pages is what you see from Karen, for example, just the usual, her format. And the following blue pages will be my information that supports what I'm asking for, or gives more details about it. There's two major changes in this budget that kind of represent 90% of the increase. One of them is wage adjustment, and the other one is a school resource officer. I sent a monthly update to the board, I believe it was last month, and kind of explained my thoughts behind the school resource officer. I think it's super, super important. Do I think it belongs 100% in my budget? No, but I don't have any control over the school budget. So I personally think it should go in as a warrant article, but I wanted to put it in my budget just to show that it's something that I would support so much, and I think it's so important that if it needed to be 100% in my budget, that I would think that that's worth the money. I don't know of any.
Let me just get something straight. So what you're saying is that maybe the schools should be paying for part of the resource?
Yes, I don't know of any community, at least in New Hampshire, I don't know other states, that the town pays for the school resource officer 100%.
Okay. All right.
As a matter of fact, usually the school pays for 50% or more,
Okay.
up to 100%.
All right.
So, but since I have, I've talked to the school board, I've talked to, at least to the chair, I've talked to the superintendent, principal, gone over everything, but obviously I can't put stuff in their budget. I've suggested that I think it should be shared, but what they put in their budget is up to them, and so I told them I was putting it in my budget as a placeholder of what I think is important for the town, not necessarily 100% of the town budget.
They give you any response?
Yes and no. I think they all think it's a good idea, but when it comes to money, it all just depends on the flow. So that's why I think a warrant article.
Realistically, it's all the same tax rate anyway.
Right.
Yeah, and just a question there. Are you looking to have a person on school site during school hours?
Yes.
And so it would be less than taking up their full-time position, right?
It would be a full-time position.
Oh, yes, but I mean, the school hours would be less than their full-time hours.
No.
It wouldn't be?
No, because, part of the school resource officer job that I've seen work well in other communities is you're there before the kids get there so that you're controlling all of the traffic in the morning. You're there after all the kids leave, controlling the traffic in the afternoon, and sometimes even beyond it with sports. So I think it's,
Actually, I think it's part-time, about 180 days of school, so that's.
It is 180
That's the
days.
part-time portion of it, that's about all, full-time.
Right.
Part of it's school.
right. I don't think a school resource officer would be a good part-time position because of the type of individual that it takes. As much as I think, any regular officer is highly trained, the school resource officer kind of is a step above, because it's very rare to get the balance of very tactically sound, so you don't have a situation like Florida where you had an officer that was very friendly, very PR, and then did not go into a building where there was active shooting. Tactical has to come first. But secondary, it has to be the contact for parents, for children, for kids that are having problems, for abuse at home, for teachers that have questions, going into PE classes, reading to kindergarten. So that's where it's a really, really tough mix. So on a part-time basis, the problem with the part-time basis is I don't get to dictate a lot about part-time. Part-timer doesn't want to come in or calls in sick or all these things. I don't get a lot of say in that.
Okay.
When we go part-time, the level is much higher.
So then you're also contemplating this person would do the juvenile work?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. As it is now, we do have, we have a prosecutor, obviously, that we employ just based on a subcontracting, but then we have the detective sergeant takes care of assistance prosecution. In other words, going to usually ALS hearings, which are, you already know,
Yeah.
which are like hearings at the DMV. They go to the juvenile hearings because obviously it's not the same type of prosecution. We're just trying to help kids. They go to speeding tickets and things like that. So it's kind of like a backup prosecutor, so we're not relying on an attorney 100% of the time. So yes, the school resource officer would take over all of the juvenile, everything.
Okay, and approximately how many juvenile matters do you handle during a year?
We probably only go to court with probably 2 or 3, but that's because they've changed the juvenile law so much that you have to have exhausted every other effort before taking juvenile court.
Oh, I
So
totally,
we-
yeah, I
yes.
totally agree that there aren't that many court
Right.
proceedings, but that
So
doesn't
we-
mean you don't have a case.
Exactly. So we work with a lot of cases. We have, unfortunately, we have a lot of alleged bullying that we work with the school and the kids. I would say we probably have 4 or 5 of those a year that can kind of be long in dealing with parents and things like that.
And do you deal with high school age kids too?
Yes, not as much. Absolutely. If we have high school age kids that are committing crimes or, juvenile crimes in Greenland, yes, we take care of all of that. If they do it at school at Portsmouth, then usually they'll notify us about it and we'll do a co-investigation.
With Portsmouth PD?
Yes.
Okay.
And usually it's their SRO that is doing investigation if it has to do with the high school age kid.
And handling juvenile appearances?
Yes.
Okay, so this would really add a significant function to your department.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, I think even though when you say school resource officer, first and foremost, it's protection of the kids and the staff. Tactical is first. However, because that's going to be 1% of their job, it really is important, I think, that connection with the kids. That's what we get out of DARE right now, is that, except unfortunately it's only with 1 grade. So I've started sending officers in, if they're not on the call, to go into PE classes and to read to kids and have lunch. I think that that's important. I can't even say how important I think it is as kids come up to have that that person that they can trust, but yet is still an officer, so that it's someone that can protect them. It's just another level from a teacher and an educator and then a police officer. It's the whole, it takes a village type of thing.
In your budget, is this a new position or a reassigned function?
Yes,
New
has to
position?
be a new position, yep. Just because we don't have the manpower, we have the perfect amount of manpower after we added an officer 2 years ago to cover our schedule. We don't have that to put somebody at the school with those 8 officers, unfortunately.
And what would that bring your full-time complement to?
It would be 9 with the school resource officer.
Okay.
So I did serve as school resource officer years ago in Newmarket for 2 years. That was in a junior, senior high school. So I kind of have that perspective. Since then, things have changed a lot. And school resource officers have come a long way and are very, very trained through the National Association of School Resource Officers, NASRO. So I do have some NASRO instructors that I know that, can come and speak to it. Chief Skippa, who's in Stratham, is one of the most expert chiefs in the state on school resource officers. So he has done a lot of training. He has a lot of the history. So if the board's interested in hearing about any of that stuff, he'd be more than willing to come to a meeting or to discuss it or to answer questions or anything like that. The report that came out, I forwarded it to everybody, but it was really long, so I'm not sure what people read. But the state did a study. They had a committee on school safety, and it just got released in July. And one of the recommendations is every school across the state and really across the country to have a school resource officer in it. And it's just protecting our biggest resource. Unfortunately, we're in a day and age. I hate that we're there, but it's not about our community. It's not about our good kids.
Right.
It's about everybody with mental health issues, everybody that knows someone in a domestic issue, everyone that's mad about whatever, that's what they turn to now. And it's terrible and horrible, but I want to be prepared for it rather than reactive. Face another tragedy. So that's obviously a big increase. The other big increase in the budget is for wage increases, which if you turn to, it's page 5, it's the first blue page. It shows the increase and then a new salary. So it is not the typical percentage across the board that, first blue page, number 5, on before those.
The other way. First blue.
I'll get there.
No, I just want to make sure that you're looking at the same stuff.
Okay.
So this isn't a percentage. None of the adjustments are the same percentage as each other. So I know that that's not historically what the town has done or what the board has done. But what I did this year was I did a wage study across all police functions, across the entire state, across the county, and across the region. So on the very next page, on page 6, you'll see that breakdown. You'll see what officers we have, how many years they have on, and what they currently make. And then you'll see the averages of those positions. In red, it's the state. In purple, it's the county. And in blue, it's the region. And those are to the averages for those positions. So each of those positions is that far below the average. My concern is this. I have wonderful, wonderful officers. I think that having worked with different experiences and maturities over the years, that I can't express how valuable having the maturity and people that realize working in a community like Greenland is half PR and enforcement when necessary, and yet experienced enough to handle things like what happened today. I have had 3 officers within the last 6 months recruited by another department touching Greenland. So just like I do with other departments, I find someone good and I attract them to my department. That's what they're doing now with mine because we're lagging so far behind. It used to be that we weren't the best paying, but our budgets and the way we worked and the benefits and stuff, I was able to offset it. But by doing these same just umbrella percentages year after year, some people keep falling further behind. You'll notice that the newer officers aren't far off, but the ones that have been around a long time or with rank are far off. And that's because we start to recognize we have to pay to bring in good officers, but the officers that we've kept, unfortunately, they keep falling a little bit more behind. So where we're this far behind the average, the request is for this adjustment to the average plus 1.5%, which I'll be honest, I wanted to ask for the least amount because I want to be fiscally sound, but this won't catch us up to where everybody else is by any means. I think I don't even know that it'll keep us at the average because most people are probably getting more than 1.5% this year. But it is very important that at least, at least we're in the same realm because we're falling so far behind that I don't want to turn into a training ground. I worked in Newmarket for years and that's all it was, is they paid so poorly that they would have wonderful people that obviously would go one community over because they'd get, a $5,000 raise. So it's really, really tough to compete with a Rye and a Stratum, but at the same time, I'm not even trying to get there. I'm just trying to get to the average of everybody. You'll see that the averages for Rockingham County are actually higher than for the Seacoast region. My main people that are trying to steal my people are the Seacoast region. So that's my biggest thing. So I'm not asking for the highest of those 3. I'm asking for our area, and I'm asking just to get to the average, which is the 50th percentile. I don't know. I don't know who I could try and get if some of my people left. I stole from Nottingham, I got someone from Milton. You know, at this point, that it's so difficult to hire in the emergency services, excuse me, that, you know, I just worry about the quality of the person that we're gonna get. So I feel very lucky that we have these people, but I feel like I have to let you know that I don't know that I can keep them at the rate that they're getting paid. They have to at least be at the 50th. It's tough.
Yes.
Joe Fedora, 23 Van Etten Drive. Tara, if we lose an officer, they go elsewhere, do we end up then having to pay overtime in order to cover all the shifts?
Oh, absolutely. We end up incurring a lot of overtime. We go down to as minimum staffing as we can. We incur a bunch of overtime, and then additionally, what you're taking on is, even if you get a certified officer, you're talking about obviously a lot of training to get them to Greenland. You're dealing with a lot of uniforms and supplies and all that stuff again. So losing an officer, it's not just what they make to what a new person would make. It's, you're right, there's a lot more cost involved in that.
So if we lose somebody because we didn't pay them enough, say, we still end up paying more because we've got the overtime pay and all the other costs you described.
Absolutely. And we've seen that, unfortunately. Luckily, it's just been regular attrition where people have retired or things like that. So we've taken it in stride, but if we lost, let's say, 2 people at once, you know, I'm just not sure how we would function. And I've been lucky that the people that we have come to me and said, listen, you know, Newington approached me or Stratham approached me and they can, you know, offer me this. And I've talked to them, you know, I would never suggest that they, you know, not take a raise, but at the same time, I try and offer them, you know, do you want to be a motorcycle officer? Is there a different type of environment that would make this more, you know what I mean? So everybody has stayed so far. I just don't know how much further I can do that.
Yes, Dennis.
Dennis Malloy, 10 Van Etten. Tara, between the time somebody leaves and you're fully staffed again in that position, what's the time frame there in a typical, it may not be always the same.
Typical is about a year.
Really?
Yeah, because it'll take us 6 to 7 months to go out and actually find somebody and attract them. And then if they're certified, it'll take us probably 4 to 5 months to train them.
Oh, okay.
So if they were green, knock on wood, we have not had someone green for a long time, well before me. That would probably be a couple of years, because the academy is 16 or 20 weeks now, and then FTO is usually 18 weeks, and you know, then you go beyond that.
Tara, I just wonder, how long can we sustain having a $100,000 increase every year? I mean,
Yeah, we can, absolutely. And that, I understand that 40-some thousand is raises and 50-some thousand would be an SRO, and I totally agree. I pulled back, we're not asking for any new equipment, anything else. The other increases in here, actually, you'll see one of them is for the LED light conversion. That's just if the town is doing it, that obviously I put it in my budget. Everything else, I've been able to keep the same or go down. But you're right, that's not sustainable. We can't do that every year. And I don't want to keep adding officers that we don't need. I think that the school resource officer should be in the school budget. I have no say in that. We need it, so I don't, like Karen said, it comes out of the same pocket, so I need to be the person to advocate for it. So I think it should be in a warrant article. See if the parents want a school resource officer or something like that, or if you guys talk to the school, I don't know really how else to do it. I just wanted to bring it forward because I have to be the one to be asking for it. As far as the raises, it's not sustainable either. I don't plan on asking for $40-some thousand in raises each year. But I want to get them to a point where I feel comfortable they won't leave. They're getting as much out of us as we are out of them. We have amazing officers. That was so obvious today. Today, we call in major crime, but we had six out of 8 of our full-time guys come here working, interviewing, collecting evidence, and it's just, as a chief, to not worry about each one of them, knowing that they can do every single job that's necessary is it's amazing. If you visited other towns, that's not the case very often. And like places like Stratham that pay much higher than us, they're struggling right now to get people. So is Rye. So I think that we have something going for us. I think the town, the community is wonderful, supportive. I think that we do offer things here, trainings and motor officer and different things that they might not get other places. But when you fall behind, when we're that below 50%, sometimes it kind of starts to be kind of hollow.
As far as which budget's in, it's actually easier for the New Hampshire retirement system that it's in the town budget, because there are so many rules on number of hours and the retirement system that to have the school have one person in that group could be a logistical nightmare for them.
The difference between Group 1 and Group 2.
Right.
Well, I think it would still be a police employee, but getting paid out of the school budget into the town budget is the way other towns do it. For instance, I think Stratham, that the town size pays 20%. They're adding one to the elementary school. The school's picking up 100% of that. But they're still a police employee and they get paid via the police department. So how they do the funds.
Yeah.
They would do it as a contracted service, I think.
Right, so we would just receive some revenue we would give the money to the school and then get some revenue back from the school.
Exactly. In other words, they would contract for so many hours of police service.
Okay.
The same way as so many hours of OT or
Right,
PT or
because
whatever.
I just would not want them to have that one person in that group, because the police retirement is very different.
Right. Well, and there has to be a very clear MOU. I'm sure I could get examples, but the person has to be a police employee because they're not checking home passes. They're doing a lot of PR stuff and educator stuff, but it has to be that, the police function obviously is always going to come first.
Okay, well, I think that's something the budget committee can present to the school too.
Yeah, I intend to. Just in order to back you up, I can tell you from the conservation officer side of things, we have a force of 39 with 6 openings right now. And it is very, very difficult to find anyone. They usually have a class of about 200 people apply, from which they interview 4. It's that difficult. And then almost all of their new people, in fact, do go through the academy. So your period of time of 2 years is exactly right. They go through a 1-year period of academy and then basic training, but before they really can be on their own with the patrol area, it's 2 years.
Right. There's training beyond the academy. They may be certified to be on their own, but how good are they? You don't feel comfortable with them handling a call like we got last night.
They need
someone needs some
field training
experience.
with senior officers.
Yes.
Yep.
And to see certain things and to experience certain things. And if you go back 10 years, there would be 500 people applying for one job at Fish and Game or State Police or even a Greenland PD. And it's changed so much. It's really hard to find good people, and especially that can pass a background check and, all that stuff.
Okay.
So.
Mind if I ask a question?
Go ahead.
John Panaccio from 86 Tidewater. On your overtime.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now that you're at a full complement.
Yes.
And I'm not looking at just the dollars would be misleading, but from your overtime hours themselves, and I don't have that book, are your overtime hours going up or they're going down?
They go up a little bit. Usually that's because, we're doing more. We're doing more, unfortunately, crimes like that, overdoses. So we have people that we're holding over more. And obviously people earn more vacation time as they get more senior. But absent that, we're going down on the percentage of overtime that we cover because we have that extra full-timer. So whereas we used to cover 40 to 45% of all overtime, now we only cover 32% of it. Because we can go down to one person coverage if someone's sick. Or if the second person is taking a vacation day, we can go down to one person. So in other words, the money is going up a little bit, but it kind of comes out in the wash between the hours and the percentage.
John,
Does it make sense?
There's a page in here, page 12 of your book, Chief, that really answers, I think, all the questions that John would have, so we should just give you a copy of that.
Okay, yeah, because that would be one of the questions I would ask.
Yeah, the budget committee will get a copy of all of that.
We'll get a copy of that.
Yep.
Yeah, because I think as your salaries go up, it's very misleading when you look at dollars from
Yes.
your standpoint. So if you see dollars going up, it's easier to look at the number of hours. If they're
Right.
increasing as a percentage of.
Absolutely.
And even as a percentage, keep in mind, you have a number of officers you have a higher number of officers, so your percentage would typically go down.
Right.
So.
And that
that's why I
percentage
kinda wanna-
overall, right, exactly.
I mean, I would like to see kind of a decrease in the hours because you now have that full-time complement, because I think that
Right.
may offset some of your salary requests.
Yes,
If you
and
can
that's,
do something with that.
That's what this page does for you. On a per officer basis, it estimates that overtime per officer, plus sick time, plus shift extension, search warrants, and department meetings.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
yeah. And I take, on the sick time too, I take the average of the past 3 years. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if in fact you do receive an SRO, would the summer hours help alleviate overtime?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That and the person, even though it's summer hours, they would still be responsible for a lot of the school functions because as we know, we still have summer school and things like that. So even though it wouldn't be full-time up there, that person would be responsible for covering things when they have events or, you know, if there's a large group of kids coming in for the school for the day. And then absolutely, they would get adjusted throughout the summer for hours when people take time off, which is our most likely time that people do take off, with the exception of usually one ski week.
Okay.
Not me, it's everybody else.
All right, anything else you'd like to,
The only other thing is, like I mentioned, that the LED light thing, that's completely, I just want to do that if the town's doing it.
itself in a very short period of time?
Yeah,
Found out, yeah.
and that's $15,000, so that's just if the town is doing it. The computer services went up a little bit, and that's obviously technology, just expensive and keeping us protected. We did have a computer issue this year where something got into the server. We never did figure out if it was a virus or what happened, but it deleted a big portion of what was on our server. Doug, luckily.
Right, it was similar to what happened to the town back several years ago.
Yeah, just not CryptoLocker. We didn't get the choice of paying a big amount and getting it back. Not that we would have, but it just was gone. So we were able to recover, I think 90% of it probably from a backup, but we immediately started doing online backup. We started paying for that service because, going through the backups and finding what you need versus when was the last successful backup for that particular file, so, I mean, it's only, I think, $250 a year for online, but, technology just keeps on moving ahead. So, like I said, I didn't request any new equipment this year, anything else. I think, I wanted to make sure it was a priority.
No car.
The cars come out of the revolving fund, so there will be one car, but it will not cost anything.
And then we'll do a standard warrant article to put in for the capital reserve for replacing bulletproof vests again.
Yep, there's 2 requests for warrant articles.
There
One for the
is.
bulletproof vest and one towards the roof.
One for the roof. I'm coming up on my 20-year roof.
Yeah.
So I'm not I don't know if we should start, it needs to be replaced in 2022 or 2023. So I'm not sure if we should start, I know.
And it was listed
I
in
know.
the CIP.
I do too, actually. So I don't know if we should start doing 4,000 a year, and then have it then, or if you guys want it in one lump
When
sum.
we get a price and we can go from there.
A price would be good, because all I'm operating off of is contractors saying, oh, that would be about.
Yeah, why don't I get a couple prices and then you'll have something to look at it for.
That'd be terrific if that's okay with the board.
Just a better number for the warrant article.
Right.
Yeah,
All right, the best.
okay,
A best, $1,000.
all right. Anything else?
So as you go through, I tried to be as specific as possible on line items and what falls under them and the breakdown of overtime. So if you have questions, feel free to call me or email me, text me, whatever.
Okay.
I tried to make it a little bit easier to read this year by attaching Karen's part with my part.
Any other questions?
I guess I'd just like to talk about the SRO real quick. I think it's the life and times and the age that we live in. It's a cost of doing business.
Unfortunately.
Well, maybe every department can sharpen their pencil and we can take a little, make it work. It needs to be done, I mean. It's too bad, but I think it's a cost of business. I think that the children of the town and the staff deserve safety.
And I agree.
I don't think it should come out of your budget. And
The
it
way-
wouldn't be the 100 jump. That is a lot of money, so.
Right. And it does look
I
a
think it
lot
needs to
when
be
you look
done.
at the police department budget and you're like, well, we're up $100,000
Right,
in one
it just
year.
sticks out like that, but that's a,
Yeah. It is to the point where
it's a necessity.
I started doing some research just on, well, we're only through 8th grade. Well, 15 to 18% of all school shootings happen in junior high or lower, unfortunately now, which it just makes me sick. But, you know, it's our, the way one SRO put it, it's $100,000 a year and the safety of your kids. So we put the right person in there and it just alleviates all the worry. So, unfortunately, it's important.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Anything you need, just.
all right,
no,
thank you. How's the cold coming? Pneumonia?
Pneumonia, I still have pneumonia. It was rough yesterday, and then when I woke up this morning, I was like, well, here you go. But that's right.
Head home, take yourself some chicken soup. And
Yep, chicken soup for the soul, that's true.
All right, thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I guess we'll have done this.
Chief Presta.
You're gonna have to,
My knee's not doing well, but I.
Rain. As you can see, the budget went up some, basically, most of it's over the full-time people. We also had some decreases in the budget. The decreases was in the stipend, was almost by half, because we cut the stipends with putting more and more part-timers on. And the stipend people, there's only gonna be 3 of us this year. So that's gonna be a big, quite a bit of a savings there. So we're not gonna have as many stipends. One of the stipends, of course, is mine. Bookkeeper, which is, she gets a stipend. We have one dispatcher still on stipend, which I'm not sure if he's gonna be around for next year or not. That's Mr. Hazard. He was been very sick for the last, not very sick, but he's been ill for the last 6 months. EMS supplies went up, of course, again, we're doing paramedic stuff and the needles and all the pads and the AEDs, we were replacing pads. We also replaced the pads for all the police departments too, because the police departments are in fire and they're here because the dates run out and they recommend don't use them past the date, so we're doing a lot of replacement of that. Trainings, of course, we get a lot of EMS training coming up. We have one person right now in Fire 2. And it's just, we never know when the trainings, if we're gonna use it or we're not gonna use it. It matters how many people stay and how many people go. Again, we still get the revolving door going on for the part-timers.
soon as someone sees a good part-timer, they hire him as a full-timer, or even, we're just doing the best we can. Of course, I'm still working on the full-timers. We put a conditional offer out on one, which we're waiting for the background check. That went out on 9/27. The police department's doing a background check for us on that, and then we're gonna have some results, and then I'm gonna come to you people and see which way we wanna go with that. I have another gentleman turning in an application. He's finishing up what he needs to qualification-wise. The only he's missing right now is his CDL. And CDL just seems to be such a problem to get, and I don't know why. Chip knows, CDLs have just been, it's a crazy thing to try to get, and people are scared of it, and I don't know why.
CDL truck license?
Yep. It's the worst thing.
Getting it and keeping it has just become a nightmare.
Right.
Not exempt. I thought fire department was exempt.
No.
They're exempt going to the scene. They are not exempt driving back. Am I correct in saying that?
That's exactly right.
And that's what's going on there. That's always been that way, but we've been very, very lucky.
You don't need it, but it's not an emergency coming home.
Yep.
Same thing with plow truck drivers. Should be the other way around. Plow truck drivers, you didn't need a CDL while it was snowing, but once it stopped.
You couldn't get the truck home.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But the exemption, we really don't want the liability. That's why we probably, I'm gonna say it was over 10, 12, 15 years ago, we went to the CDLs. Cause we don't need the liability of someone getting hurt and them, our insurance company saying, why don't they have CDLs?
Well, especially with your trucks, they all have air. So you need an air endorsement. You have one tanker truck, so you need to have a bulk tank endorsement.
All of them gotta have tanks on them.
Yeah.
You got a volunteer right here.
So, this is not the same as driving a Ryder rental truck.
And don't forget, now they have standard and automatic endorsements.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. And they're very
You can't
complicated.
believe
I just got an old driver endorsement, that's all.
How many people come into my shop and they cannot drive a standard? That's in my business, but.
That's anti-theft today.
Yeah. The nights have been working out pretty well, the standby pay. That's doing very well. We've been filling that. Once in a while, we have an open shift. We do pretty well with that. And, we had a call last night. We were right on it. Same call Tara was referencing on earlier. But other than that, the biggest thing is the full-time people, which I gotta tell you, as soon as the budget, when it was approved last year, I went to work on that, and I knew it was gonna be the worst year of being here. It's been the toughest thing to try to find somebody qualified. And the second problem I'm having is also the hours. They can go to another department and work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 5 days off. They work 9 days a week. 9 days a month. And that's crazy. The hours we're presenting to them is basically it's working half a year because you work 4 days on, 4 days off. So we're trying to make it as much attractive as we can. And, again, and as Bob, we were talking for the last 5-6 years, is it growing pains? Yes, and we're trying to slow it down some, but this is what's going on. Our mutual aid ambulance is basically cut down to just about nil. Once in a while, we'll need a medic because we have a few medics on now. Other than that, that's what I got in a nutshell.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Finally got to fix that roof out there, huh?
They're out there doing it.
Thank you.
Have they finished it?
Yeah, I have you were allotted $90,000. How much did it cost you?
Was it nothing to do with, I think that went through, what was that?
I think
52?
About 45.7.
About 60% of it.
Yeah,
I think didn't we add like a small cricket roof that brought it up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that
there was something on the edges, I think.
The invoice came today, and I believe it was 45,000 and something.
They do those yet, though.
Have they done them?
The deflectors for
I don't think they've been, that's one thing. Is Dee say it was complete? He has not reported to me, has that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I know they took their fencing down around the perimeter.
Yeah, they got some other work to do up there before they're done.
I think they do too, yeah.
Okay.
And that's supposed to be done before the 31st. If I remember right.
Yeah.
Because that was a stipulation we put in the contract.
Right, yeah.
So what you're telling me is that it's not gonna go with 50,000?
Oh,
Probably not.
no.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Can I have the rest of the check?
Can if you want.
Okay, I'll talk to Kevin.
If you get the check out, you're doing well.
As I remember, that was a specific warrant article, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Which means that it will lapse. It won't be spent for
Right, you
anything
can't
else.
have it.
No, it can't.
Right. But I mean, it will
That's
lapse
good.
back.
Any questions,
Yeah, that one-
John?
No, I'll just sandbag you at the budget meeting.
Let's do it now.
That wouldn't be, no.
That would be fun.
No, the only
I'm
question I
ready.
have, because I haven't been involved, I don't want to keep everybody long, but could you explain the requirement of having 2 lieutenants?
That's 4 days on, 4 days off, so that we're not overlapping anybody. We're having the same face there all the time between 2 people. So it's a rotating schedule, 4 days on, so it's really an 8-day schedule.
Okay, and.
The rest of them are gonna be per diem people like we have right now.
Okay, so the lieutenants are there during the day, they're there at night, or?
They're there during the day, and there's gonna be criterion of when they can come back on what kind of calls. If I don't have another medic on at night, and we need them back, they're able to come back over.
And why are they gonna be lieutenants?
We just want somebody with some rank that can see the people that come through the door all the time and can make, some sort of decision. Also, if you going out onto a scene, you need some sort of somebody running the scene.
Okay, and last year you had a budget of 94,000, and this year's 121. What's the difference?
Because we only went
7
from,
months. 7 months.
7 months to 12?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's no actual? You didn't have a lieutenant this year, or you did?
No, the conditional offer is out right now, but no,
Okay,
there
so
has
last
not
year
been a
was budgeted,
lieutenant
but you
hired
didn't
yet.
use it?
Right.
Okay, that's fine.
And we might, the reason we might be using some of that money is because we still need the part-timers to cover those shifts that we didn't cover in the full-timers.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
You don't have to answer that question when it comes to the budget committee.
He's gonna ask it again.
Trust me, we'll push it to that, trust me.
Anybody else in the board have any questions for Ralph?
While he's here, do you want to have the basic report on the fire department building committee?
Sure.
Yes.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay.
Skip right to that, yeah.
The fire department building committee has continued to meet. The good news that we have is the first thing we did was try to investigate the site and determine that it was capable of handling a building of the type and size that Ralph is contemplating. We have found by working with the building inspector that we do have sufficient septic capacity to handle it. We're in the process right now of geotechnical boring investigations to make sure that the soil is sufficient to handle a building of that size and weight. And we will get that information back.
He told me this morning.
Oh, okay.
I saw him this morning.
So real soon, we'll have a report. We believe it's going to be fine, but the key is that we know that the site is of sufficient size and quality to handle the type of building that we're talking about. There's been sort of a generic design put together, which would be 3 long bays with doors at each end so that vehicles can be driven through. They don't have to be stored that way, but they can be stored that way. With sufficient turning room at each end of the building so that the full fire truck can both get in and drive through and get around. Essentially, it would be over here where the current public works building is. That would be taken down. The ditches around the outside would be changed from open drainage to closed drainage. By that I mean instead of having them just as swales where you have surface water drainage, they would be enclosed with culverts. So that we would be able to essentially have a flat surface all the way around where the large trucks can go. It's being sized sufficiently so that it would handle I think it's up to 10 resident employees. I think that's what we said.
I think that's what we got.
Yeah, it's being sized, we don't have that many employees, but it's being sized so it can handle that. Together
At
with
this point,
sufficient,
there was 4 bunk rooms.
Yes.
yes,
At this point.
with sufficient training, support, administrative space, a place where the turnout gear can be kept and washed and kept away from other people, because if it comes back with hazardous materials, it can't be allowed to contaminate all sorts of things. So it would be a full self-contained operation. One of the things we learned is that we probably should not put the emergency management department over there, but leave it instead in this building. Last Friday, RFPs went out for construction management services, and we were going to have questions back, I think, tomorrow or the next day. The questions.
Yeah.
And then we're hoping for responses by the 26th of October. And then once a construction manager is selected, then we'll be able to have better numbers and a guaranteed maximum price for presentation to the budget committee sometime in December, so that we could potentially meet requirements to go out to bond hearing and presentation to the town meeting. So it's an aggressive schedule, but I think it's going to be met.
Go ahead.
One more thing on the budget, and this is probably gonna end up being a warrant article, which would probably come out of the ambulance fund, is seeing this cancer bill get passed through the firefighters. We're trying to get everybody into having 2 sets of gear. So one set goes down, what's been decided on the fire scene, you strip down, the gear goes into plastic bags, and so it's not contaminating the fire trucks or contaminating the fire station. So while the other gear is being all clean, we're gonna end up on most of the people that are active people, we're gonna need another set of gear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So did I leave out anything that you want to mention to anyone? Okay.
I think that's fine.
Thank you, Ralph.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Health and Human Services.
There's basically no changes in these sections. Pest and animal control, mosquito control is holding their same line at the 20,000, you're welcome. Health officer is fine with hers. The health agencies, everybody requested level funding. Yep. So there's no changes on that whatsoever.
Okay.
There may be one agency that gets dropped off because they have not requested their funds as of yet. But we'll see as the year winds down.
Okay.
And then under direct assistance, I've asked for the same level funding of the 18,802. We are getting close to exceeding that this year. We're at 14.5. There's couple more months that I know that we'll have a rent payment to do, and there was a large utility payment for someone today in this manifest as well. So we may exceed the budget for 2018, but I don't anticipate that continuing through the entire 19.
Okay.
So, and that's it. It's basically a totally flat budget.
All right. Questions?
I like flat budgets. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. John, any questions?
I do have some news that will affect when we get back to when the wages are determined for our personnel costs. We did get our health insurance rates in on Friday. Health insurance up 10.5%. Dental insurance up 2.3%. Decrease in short-term disability, no change to long-term disability or life. Now, last year we had like a 7% decrease in health insurance.
Right.
This year, 10.5 increase. But it's based on the usage in the small pool.
All right, approval of minutes from October 1st.
Move we approve as amended.
Second.
I have a motion, second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Coakley update.
Okay, likely the board has read about the one property that now is positive for 1,4-dioxane. It has been positive for quite a while at 0.38 parts per trillion. That was below the DES threshold, so there was no action required. In September, DES lowered that threshold to 0.32, which then made that property automatically out of compliance. And DES and EPA ordered immediate bottled water for the family. And CLG has 30 days to remediate the problem permanently, and bottled water cannot be a permanent solution. The property does have a filtration system in the home, which just may need to be upgraded or somehow get onto public water. I don't have any more updates on that particular property at this time. The owners have been very cooperative. They have not been unduly alarmed, and they so far have appreciated what the Coakley Group has done for them. Also, as part of the Coakley update is the Breakfast Hill water line. I met Friday with the City of Portsmouth on this along with Underwood Engineers and went over the deliverable for the waterline upgrade. 3 scenarios have been outlined, basically affecting where the water source is coming from. There's no changes along, obviously it's Breakfast Hill Road, the neighborhoods, and how it connects on each end is what is different. It goes along Post Road, but it's whether or not the water is coming from the Portsmouth system or whether the water comes from the Pease system. So both of those have been looked at. One will need a pressure tank, the other will not. Both will need pumping stations, PRVs, and they both actually need 2 for the proposals. And I'll copy this for the board that has all the technical part of it and the hydraulic findings. The pump station is required. What they've determined is the Portsmouth water line, say this is at the elevation. There's an area along Breakfast Hill Road that is at a higher elevation. So the line can't be on a straight shot. So they do have to pump up to be able to do the Breakfast Hill line. With these new scenarios, particularly the Pease one, the water pressures, which was the concern with DES with the first, just the regular basic loop that we have been talking, connected Post Road, connected Route 1 loop, was not strong enough. The pressures did not meet the requirements of DES. These pressures, particularly the Pease one, are coming through at 82 PSI, where 80 is considered the max without requiring a pressure valve. Currently, the average in Greenland is at around a 60. So this will increase the pressure for all the residents on water in Greenland as well. And we do have areas through the Tuttle Lane, Holly Grove, Eagle that have low pressure problems. I don't think the pressures are low up in the Hillside Meadow area.
Never had a check on it.
Right. The only concern that they have with this, and there'll be when this happens in 2 to whatever years, the homes that have older plumbing may have problems with the increased pressure. So there may be older homes that will need some plumbing upgrades that will discover that they now will have leaks because the pressure is up 20. They said raising a pressure 8 to 10, people don't notice anything really, other than better pressure, but going up 20 is a significant increase. The next step, I will have numbers from Underwood for what the costs will be for the next step for engineering and design work.
What is the estimated cost for the project?
For the project, not counting the pump stations and actual piping, is $15,200,000.
So you're probably talking about $20 million with
Correct.
pumping and everything.
Yeah, yeah. But what I don't know is what, and that's the number that would be for like 2020 or 2021.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I don't know the number for 2019 for the next phase of engineering.
Okay, so this study was what, a $200,000 study?
Correct.
And that's only a half of the study? We need another study after that?
This was to determine which was the best scenario.
Okay.
Based on all the hydrology work. They have mapped out all of the properties where the feed-ins would come along in all the neighborhoods. So that part is done. This was to determine which is the best, where to get the water the best way. The next one will be the actual design of pipes in the ground.
And this study was paid for by a grant?
A grant through the MBTE funds.
Okay, all right.
That the city of Portsmouth had to apply for because they own the water system. Underwood Engineers was going back to the committee, the woman that's running the program, going back to her to find out if the continued engineering part still has to go through the city of Portsmouth or that can be under the town of Greenland's name.
Right. Paul, anything on your part?
No, that's accurate. The only question I had was, are they sizing, if they're giving us estimates of the 15 million, are they sizing based on current customers or potential future customers?
Potential.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have we put out any kind of letter to the residents that would be affected to let them start
Saving money?
Yeah.
Not as yet. I think we need to have a little bit, we need to get to the next step to then find more, more of the timeline. They said they estimate between 8,000 and 15,000 for a property to hook up. Now, and there's ways that the town can handle that. The town can handle it by covering it and doing betterment charges. There's creative ways, but I think we're a little bit too early to get to that stage.
Dennis.
Yes.
Dennis Lloyd, if that were to all pass, I'm still not clear, will it be then a requirement for everybody to hook up, or what are the options?
That will be a board decision, but talking with the state and with the MBTE money, they are making it a requirement. Our whole impact has been, we're doing this preventative because the concern is that the private wells are drawing the contaminants away from the Coakley. So if we're going to get these funds to prevent any further contamination, we don't want to continue be pulling at the same time.
That's a question I'm getting.
Well, and I can tell you too, because I'm a member of that committee that reviews these things. The chance that this would be a grant is virtually nil. This would be a combination potentially of grant and loan. But part of the work that the town would have to do too is zoning in this area. Because obviously if you have public water, then the rationale for having our type of zoning in that area falls away. And so there would be the potential for substantial development in that particular area, which the planning board has to deal with. Now, again, when you say a requirement if those state funds are used. We'd have no idea what Portsmouth would be doing here, whether they would be putting something into this, whether they expect the town of Greenland to do all of this.
They expect the town of Greenland to do it all.
Yeah, and so that would be very difficult for other people in, other parts of the town to say, really? I'm going to be putting this type of obligation into our debt structure and receiving no benefit ourselves?
That
Really?
would have to go on as a warrant article.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, it would also have to pass by 2/3,
Mhm.
or 60%. But very difficult to get people to understand the value in the proposition if you don't live there.
Well, I would think that people would have to grudgingly admit that it's gonna add value to their property to be on the water system. Maybe I'm wrong.
Some of the wells have cleaner water than the Portsmouth water system. That's the problem. I mean, that's a great solution, but I'm not giving up my clean water to get piped in worse. I mean, if you're gonna, that's.
Right, and that is
This is
accurate.
deeper than that. I mean,
The Portsmouth Water
yeah,
has a
no.
0.7
Right.
PFOA, PFOS combination number, and wells are testing non-detect. Some are testing in the teens.
I mean, that's so.
So,
I'm hearing all of this.
You're right.
Knock on doors. I'm hearing all of this.
right, and they told us, that the DES said that in some of these other areas that have had to do this, 50% of the people do not want it.
Yes.
So I got a question. You just said they would be required to hook up. And then they also would be required to pay for the hookup? That doesn't make any sense to me. And I think, and I'm not sure why Coakley would not be responsible for paying for that because they created the problem. So some of these people, I mean, I don't know what these people can afford it or why should they pay for it? I mean, plus if their wells are cleaned.
Right, EPA won't require Coakley to pay for it until the levels exceed the EPA standards.
Right. And that standard right now is at 70.
Correct.
Combined.
Right, and some of the highest we have are just in the teens.
Right. Or maybe 20 somewhere in there, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There might be one or two higher, but for the most part, they're in the teens.
Well, somehow.
And that's only like a dozen out of the 240.
And the other thing we know, this will not be in this upcoming budget.
No.
These issues are at least another year away.
Right, potentially in this budget, the board will be able to make a determination on the next phase of the engineering.
Yeah, and whether we have to contribute anything to that or not, or whether that continues on as a state grant.
Correct. But we won't, I'll have that number in November.
Yeah. I can tell you in other communities where we've been looking at these things, developers have paid a substantial amount of the installation costs. But of course, the other side of that is they have to be able to develop.
Right.
Right.
And so it's a question of skin in the game.
Right, and at this point, our zoning is, 60,000 square feet for the lots.
Right.
Would that have to change?
No.
Not necessarily, right?
Right.
Well, again, the water line is not required. I mean, it is an option, but it is not
Right.
something that has to be done.
Right. Right, I'm saying if we put the water line in, zoning doesn't have to change just because there's a water line, does it?
No.
Okay.
Karen's statement before, which I think is accurate, is that in order to successfully apply for either SRF or MTBE funding, you would have to have a requirement for people to join. Okay, but
Right.
that's a condition of funding.
Right.
Okay, so that is a zoning change that people will decide to make or not make.
Correct, okay.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, Don Miller, 511 Post Road. I just heard the term 60,000 square feet, which has been in my mind for the last 20 years that I've lived here.
Mhm.
And then I look at Bramble Valley, and I look at, does that mean a single-family house, or can it mean a duplex, a condex, 4 apartments in a building? I mean, this is totally confusing to me because I sit here and look at the building. As you said, somebody told me recently they only had 6 permits this year. Well, that's because they had 73 the year before. I mean, can somebody explain to me in simple language, what is the zoning in the town of Greenland? If I walk in and buy a piece of property to build a house on, how big does it have to be? Postage stamp or 60,000?
60,000 square feet unless it's an existing lot of record. There may be a couple smaller lots that are
Okay,
existing.
but I can understand that.
Okay, now, that's true, residential zone, standard type building. We also have conservation subdivisions.
Yeah.
If you take a look at an area like Van Etten, for example, the area where those homes are placed, there's less than 60,000 square feet allocated around the house. But when you take the total lot that was involved, there's well more than that. So they have conservation areas. In addition, Bramber is special because that was elderly restricted housing.
Right, and it's just one lot.
Yes. So that's why they're different. They're not part of your standard residential zone.
Okay. Then I'll ask this one more quick question, because part of this discussion over the water line coming in on Post Road was the fact that there's a piece of property up there that is utilized now for a golf course, and it'd be much more beneficial to a developer or the family to develop that land. Does that mean that if that land were to be developed, each individual home would be required to have 60,000 square feet?
Depending upon whether they
go to
chose,
depending
Right.
again.
If they wanted an age restricted, not necessarily.
or a conservation,
Right.
as opposed to a standard single-family home subdivision.
In other words, there are exceptions to every rule.
Or they have choices.
And I think this goes back to answering a question that Mr. Ralston asked before, okay? How many years is this gonna go up $100,000 every year? Every year and even more, Jim. As long as we keep building and adding.
Okay.
All right, so that should hopefully update.
Alrighty. Software upgrade.
Okay, last week I attended a day of the vision assessing user group to look at the new program Vision 8. We are currently operating on Vision 6.5, which will no longer be supported after 2019. So in 2020, we have to do something. So the recommendation is obviously to do it in 2019. A lot of towns have already made the changes, but where we had our revaluation in 18, it's not something I wanted to handle a revaluation with a new software program all at the same time. That wouldn't have been wise. So I went to this vision upgrade, and it is definitely worth the town to upgrade to Vision 8 from the Vision 6.5. I looked at the other two competing softwares, Avatar and Munis. One of them works well with the town clerk software, as does Vision. The other one does not. And talking with the tax software, she has no interest in changing software. What she has is working well, doesn't want to change, and I totally agree. And she has excellent support for it. So that limited it down to the two different companies, Vision or the Avatar program. A new program would be $35,000 to $40,000 with a 6-week transition process. Vision, if you're already on Vision, they're offering $10,000 for the upgrade, and it's a 10-day transition process. And so my recommendation is that we move forward with the Vision upgrade and get that going.
Okay.
And in my opinion, and the board can be changed, I don't think we need to go out to bid for this because it's an existing software program that we have and it's just their upgrade.
Okay.
What's your timing?
I would like to be able to move forward so that we do the upgrade in May of 2019. That way the first half tax bill would go out. And then, because that's based on the prior year, and then we would do the upgrade in May so that any hiccups in the transfer of data, if some of the values aren't different, that gives us plenty of time to get that done before the September 1st date that we have to have the numbers for DRA for the second half tax billing.
Are you looking to encumber from current funds?
What I'm actually looking to do is pay the $5,000 in the 2018 funds, and in the 19 budget, just have the $5,000. We have the money remaining in the assessing for this year because we haven't had the BTLA or the abatement cases that we're looming. So we can absorb the 5,000 in 18 within assessing.
Can you absorb the 10?
I don't think so. Because I think any other overage that we have in any of them, I need to hang on to, or the town, the town needs to hang on to for snow. Because we're already over on snow. So I don't, and we still have November, December. So I think there's probably 12 available in assessing, but I don't want to use it all. We need places to like
take from.
Cover snow, yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm sorry, somehow I still feel like I'm on the board.
Well, you can be again.
I kind of like being out here. On the transition, from the upgrade standpoint, you're given a certain amount of time before the tax bills come out. Have you checked with anybody or anybody who's done that upgrade to see if they've had any issues with the upgrades at all, and how long it actually took them to make that upgrade?
Yeah, that's what I did while I was at this conference on the last Thursday.
Okay.
And they had a whole panel at one of the sessions with people that have already made the change. Okay. And they allow a 14-day for the upgrade. They said most of them has been done in a week. Some of them found problems that they had in their current system that were able to be fixed at the time. We have a problem currently in our system with our sales analysis file transferring over to the live file. It's a process that happens during revaluation. We had the problem 5 years ago in reval, we had it again this year. So I talked to them about that, well, specifically that problem, that, garbage in, garbage out. I don't want that problem to follow it into the upgrade. They heard me loud and clear. They were in contact with me last Tuesday, downloaded a full set of our data, and are working on that problem to fix that for us now. Regardless of whether we go with the upgrade or not, they were going to get that fixed for us.
Okay, so they're going to actually do the upgrade from here or from their...
They take our data, they do the upgrade. They're based in Massachusetts. They take our data, do the upgrade right there, test it, and then install it. Then they'll come on site and install. And in the installation includes several hours of training on the specific things. One of the things that, there's several new aspects of Vision 8 that I reviewed with the tax collector that will help her and be more efficient for a lot of the rest of us. But she will be able to, right now when we have a sale, we can transfer in the deed, the date, the sale price, and whether it's qualified or not. The new sales have more categories that will then be able to put in the mortgage information and the mortgagee at the same time. So each year when she has to go through the lien process, she has to research mortgagees through the registry. It'll be right there, and she'll be able to just track back to that booking page to make sure that was still valid. Each property I have to sketch, or the person doing it has to sketch it with like an ArcView software sketching the property boundaries, and some of these have like, bay windows and things that are funky. What the system has never allowed you to do is like copy a drawing. And Bramber Valley is a great example. There was like 4 models, over 70 houses. We had to draw them each individually each time because there is no option of like cut and paste, copy this. This new program, you can draw, and we have a lot of very similar condexes, same thing. You're going to be able to draw it, put it into a file that says Bramber Stella, and D.D. Cook Condex, left side, right side. A lot of these standard things that we do repeatedly, you're going to be able to pull down. We've got CV Wade, which are Chinburg ones, and they're all going to be fairly similar, the measurements end up being fairly similar. We're going to be able to put those into like a folder and just pull it. If we do a condex that's unique and we draw that, it gives you the ability to then just flip it and get your exact same measurements flipped with one button instead of redrawing the entire thing. So there's gonna be a lot less chances of error. Each user will be able to set up their own dashboard along the top. Right now, if, say, Marge wants to pull a report, you have to go into about 15 different places and find the report that you want. And for like the building inspector or Marge, the ones that use the same specific report each time, they're gonna be able to just have their dashboard and hide all the things that they don't need to use. And just be a lot more efficient. They can find exactly what they want.
Totally streamlines the whole.
Very much streamlines it. The user audit process that they have in there built in is a lot more secure. I was pleasantly surprised because Vision, their customer service over the past 2 or 3 years has gotten progressively worse. And we've not been happy with it. They announced at this here thing that they had 4 software tech support people, which they've had forever. They now have increased to 12. They acknowledged the fact that their customer service had become one of the worst in the industry, while they still had the product that was one of the best in the industry. They were under new presidency stuff, and they said they're determined to continue to have the best product and get back to having the best service.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Just one last question on your plan. If you have the 5,000 next year and we have a default budget enacted, what impact would that have?
We would be fine because the default budget would be the same as the prior year's budget. And other than the 2 contracts that have been pulled out for the revals, those are contracts that are one time, so those would be pulled out. We still had increased the assessing budget to deal with abatements and hearings that could have happened. Particularly, we had the funds available if the Fairpoint one had come to fruition.
Okay.
And we were able to settle out the EIP one without going through a long, expensive process. But those funds were available just in case.
So you're covered, so.
I think we are. Fairpoint is still hanging out there. We've joined in the consortium of towns, so our legal expenses on that have come way down. I mean, the bills come through here, they'll be like $36 because we're sharing it with all the towns. We have an abatement that was just filed with the court rather than Board of Tax and Land Appeals for Lowe's, which won't come through until 19, won't get to court until 19. We just were served
a week or so ago.
Attorney Laughlin is filing his appearance and we're just getting that ready.
Okay, so if you budget that way, we're fine, and if, as we get into our last manifest, you have some money, then we can take care of it and encumber it.
We can, because we'll have the contract, so we would be able to legally encumber it if we don't get snow in November and December.
Right.
Okay,
so that's.
Think warm.
Good. Motion.
I move to approve the contract for the vision assessment software upgrade in the amount of $5,000, which is due upon signing the upgrade schedule. The remaining balance of $5,000 will be due upon installation.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. All right, the Budget Committee rep.
This was put on the agenda. You want me to do it? Or you...
No, I'm gonna do it.
All right.
I wanna get done today.
Oh, that
You don't want to be here for breakfast either, do you?
No. Last year, when the Budget Committee presented their $11 million budget with about 2 days to review it, at $11 million, I thought that was kind of ridiculous. So if they're not giving me time to review it, I felt it'd be time to give them a bottom line cut of $400,000. Apparently, it wasn't received very well by the school board. But I wasn't really that's not the only time they've done it. I don't think they've ever shown up with more than a week, if that much. Usually it's a day of with their budget for the first hearing, not giving the budget committee any time to go through it. And it's a huge budget. I think any department, any agency that needs tax money from the town of Greenland shows up at the last minute is subject to a bottom line cut if they can't give it to us earlier. But to honor his request, if you guys want to change, go right ahead.
No, I personally, I myself, we've already set out our liaisons. As far as I'm concerned, I just assume keep them as they are. I think we're all pretty much overtaxed as it is. So, go ahead.
Well, basically, I think that's kind of ridiculous. Just because he makes a motion doesn't mean that the rest of the committee is going to follow it. So
I really think that we made them think because they had to really scuttle to get the information to us that we needed to do for their $1 million increase.
Yeah, so
I agree with not changing. I would just request, if you run into that problem again, report it to us so we can express our displeasure as an entire board and not put you in that hot seat.
I didn't mind hot seat at all. I got the defibrillator in there for the next meeting.
I'm just thinking that 5 people making a point is better than 1 person making it.
Now, but that, I think we're going to do better this year. I think the point was made and we're supposed to see it, what, 10 days?
10 days prior.
Which is, I still don't think it's enough for another $1 million budget, but I think probably I'll give them the same speech. If you're going to continue showing up the last minute with your budget, expect it. It's only fair.
Okay. And I would say also during these meetings too, as a representative from the board, you know, everybody's got the right to say what they want to say personally too. Just differentiate between.
Oh, it definitely was differentiated.
Right. But other than that, I don't think we need a motion for anything. You're, as far as I'm concerned, the liaison. If anybody disagrees with that. Okay. Knock them dead, Chip.
We won't knock them dead, but just have them justify it, that's all.
Okay. Next is liaison reports. Any?
Well, the trustees met, I believe it was last week, and one thing that did come up is that they have voted to continue on with removing the trees in back of the library, which will take place, I believe, the end of this month.
Okay.
That's it.
Any other liaison reports? Rec committee?
Nothing from the rec committee. I was at the RPC in Brentwood, so I wasn't able to go.
Okay. As far as the police and fire, the police department goes, Tara's been out with pneumonia for quite a while, and plus the fact this thing that happened this morning, she hasn't had a chance to get caught up with everything. So I've got nothing to report as far as that goes, and I think we have reported as far as the fire department goes. Anybody else? Okay. Moving right along. Town administrators report.
There was not a report between the extra meetings that we had and the conference.
Understandable. Okay, general election warrant.
This is the general election warrant for Tuesday, November 6th. And it's required that the selectmen actually sign the warrant to be posted. And so it's to the inhabitants of the town of Greenland, the county of Rockingham. You are hereby notified to meet at the Greenland Central School, 70 Post Road, Greenland, New Hampshire, on Tuesday, the 6th of November. The polls will be open 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. to act upon the following subjects: to bring in your votes for governor, U.S. representative, executive councilor, state senator, state representatives, and county officers.
Okay, motion.
Move to approve general warrant for the 2018 New Hampshire state elections.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Sign both places.
Yes. You sign it and then you certify that you signed it.
It may be way too early, but I noticed that as a reminder that we need to be present during the polls. I'll be there probably from opening until after lunchtime. So the rest of you can fight it out for whatever.
Thank you.
There's 2 places to sign.
Okay, the next item is the resident interest in land in Osprey Cove.
Yeah, this was just an email that we received, actually through the website, from a resident that lives at 35 Osprey Cove, formerly known as Bay Ridge, just before the cul-de-sac, and her question concerns the circle of land in the middle of the cul-de-sac, and she's asked, does the town own the circle? Yes, it does. If so, would the town be willing to sell it? What would the price be and what would the taxes be?
Question, is it because she'd like to see like beautification?
This is all I know about it.
Okay.
This is it.
She just wants to own the land inside the circle?
The whole
This
circle.
is our neighbor. She hasn't said anything to me. I don't know if she has to you.
No.
Your next door neighbor.
No.
Yeah, no, it came
I
from
mean,
the
you can
website,
speak
one
to
of
this,
the,
this is- I mean, it's in my front yard, in front of my house.
I assume that, you know, in the recent past, it had been in disrepair, but it's been substantially cleaned up, and you did it.
I take care of it, every time I mow my lawn, I mow that, and
Yeah.
I don't care, my wife said, can you mow that, so I mow.
And
You don't care 'cause you got told to mow it.
If it is for sale, I wanna be a player in it.
And it
That's
looks a lot better, I gotta say that. And so that, I think, may be what Mrs. Parkin is thinking about. And if she wants to work with you about some plantings or something like that,
so the town has no interest in selling that circle.
I think it would be very difficult to do that.
I would too.
You'd have to put it up
Right,
public bid
because-
and everything else. wouldn't you?
Well, and the access to properties would be impacted
That's right.
technically.
And we have
Is
other
it
areas.
landlocked? It would be, I mean, it is
Yeah.
landlocked.
I mean, we have other areas in town where residents take care of things voluntarily, and, you know, that would seem to be what she's really after, so.
Unknown, let's build a tiny house.
No.
Headlights will be a killer.
No good for a tiny house.
All right. So what's the outcome of this?
That the town is not interested in selling the property, but is willing to work with her on maintenance if that is her concern.
I'll make that as a motion if that's needed.
Okay?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving right along, target holiday hours.
This is the annual request for Black Friday. They request extended hours on the 22nd and 23rd. They haven't set their specific hours yet, but they work closely with the police department, and we require them that they have a detail during those hours.
Okay, motion.
I move to approve Target's request for extended holiday hours on November 22nd and 23rd, 2018, with the understanding they will work closely with the police department for coverage during the extra hours.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Roll-off containers.
Okay, did you want to handle this one?
You got the whole one.
Okay, 3 bids were received for the roll-off containers. Paul can answer questions if you have any. What we received, and we looked at a couple of different things. We asked for price for one, and we asked for the price for 2. Realistically, we need 2 because we have 2 that are in very poor condition. One can be repaired, one cannot be repaired. So if we were able to get 2, then we would repair the one that's repairable and keep that as a spare at the transfer station. The price for one is, the best price for one is $7,200 plus freight. McGuire, $8,175. And then East Coast Containers, which gave us the best price, is $8,500, including freight. And for 2 containers, it would be $15,000. They would reduce it to $7,500 apiece.
Okay,
That includes freight on both.
Correct.
right. Paul, any comments?
No, not at all. Actually, they all quoted what we asked for.
Mhm.
So, I mean, everything's right across the board.
Right. It's not something that was budgeted for this year. And when we initially approached this, we looked at it to get numbers for the 2019 budget. They are not included in it at this point. So then we looked at the capital reserve fund that we have for equipment at the transfer station. We've put 60,000 into it over the past 2 years, 40,000 one year, 25 the next. Funds available just through interest at this point is 68,637.
Okay, that's good.
And so they're also, we can move this for removal from capital reserve or for including the 2019 budget or a 2019 warrant article.
Comments?
And the bids are to remain valid until March 31st.
Okay.
So we kept that option open.
Well, I think we should take it out of capital reserve, that's what we put it in for. So,
I agree. Do the old containers have any value at all?
One of them's totally gone.
Okay.
Can't even be fixed.
So that's just some scrap value?
That'll just be the price of scrap metal, yes.
Okay.
Price to haul it to the scrap metal.
Okay.
Well, what I'm hoping, if I can talk Harding into it, is actually put our metal in there and get the price for the whole thing at once, and saves us a hauling costs.
Yeah.
Might as well use it if they're gonna haul it.
Right, as long as it makes it across there.
Okay. And then the other one that's repairable, do you want to keep it or dispose of it?
That, what I was thinking, we had an incident, I wanna say 3 weeks ago up there, where there was a miscommunication on a haul.
Right, the short answer is he wants to keep it.
Yeah, because what was happening, Troyano actually had an extra container they stored up there. Believe it or not, I was able to take the backhoe, pull that one off, and get the empty one into place, and we didn't have to shut down on recyclable. So it did save us.
Okay.
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion that we accept the bid of East Coast Containers for $15,000 for two sources of funding capital reserve.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passed.
Okay, could we have a second motion to authorize the withdrawal from the capital reserve fund?
So moved.
Only,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
only because that's what the trustee of the trust
Motion
fund
to have a
wants to
second.
see.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. All right. Any other new business anybody would like to, I will bring up one thing for your information. The Portsmouth Planning Director has tabled the Lonza Regional Impact issue until November 15th to designate the development a project of regional impact. And no comments will be allowed at that meeting. Mark Fougere will keep us informed through planning board meetings.
Right. The other new business that we were going to bring up was that there is an opening on the budget committee. Tibbetty Fogarty Kale has resigned. She has moved to Massachusetts. So there is an opening through statute. The budget committee is the one to fill that position. So just to get it on the tape and in the minutes that if anyone is interested to contact the chairman, Bob Krasko.
Okay, and Bob is aware of it.
Yes, he's very much aware of it. One call has been made to a former budget committee member, chairman, that is considering it at this point and will let us know.
Okay, good. Any other new business anybody like to bring up? Okay, and let's do the manifest, then we'll move into non-public.
Okay, manifests. Move approval of the general fund account payable manifest in the amount of $695,430.88, of which $550,000 is the Greenland Students.
Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Move approval of payroll manifest number 21 in the amount of $54,624.20.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Any further business before we move into non-public?
Just one, Mr. Chairman, missed one signature.
All right, motion to enter non-public.
Okay, I made the motion earlier to enter non-public for the purpose of discussing the legal means. We've already taken our vote on it, so therefore we will close off the recording.
Okay.